The research station Times Harmony's Edge Times drifted quietly through space, its metal hull reflecting the pale light from the gas giant below. The station was small compared to the massive planet it orbited, but it was home to 12 researchers who had spent the last 3 years studying something amazing. Chief Researcher Vex High stood in the archaeology lab, her 4 arms moving carefully over the ancient stone tablet they had found last week. Her moth-like wings twitched with excitement as she read the symbols carved into the dark rock. Vex High belonged to a peaceful species called the Catharians, who loved nothing more than learning about the past. Zimtel, come look at this, she called to her communication officer. Her voice carried the soft musical tone that all Catharians used when they were worried. Zimtel hurried over, his own wings folding nervously against his back. He was young for a Catharian, only 50 years old, and this was his first assignment away from their home world. What did you find, Chief? Vex High pointed at the symbols with one of her delicate fingers. These markings talk about something called the Devourers. According to this tablet, they were a species that traveled from star to star, eating everything they found. Whole planets, whole solar systems. Gone. But that was long ago, right? Zimtel asked, hoping for good news. That's what worries me, Vex High said. Look at this date marking. If I'm reading it correctly, the Devourers vanished only 2,000 years ago. That's very recent in galactic terms. Zimtel's antennae drooped. Why did they disappear? I don't know yet, but there's something else. Vex High led him to another part of the lab, where a strange metal device sat on a table. It was covered in the same symbols as the tablet, but this device was different. It hummed with energy, and small lights blinked along its surface. We found this in the same ruins. It's been slowly charging itself for thousands of years. Charging for what? I think it's some kind of beacon. A signal device. Vex High's wings fluttered faster now. What if the Devourers didn't disappear? What if they just went somewhere else, waiting for a signal to come back? Before Zimtel could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and the computer's voice echoed through the halls. Alert. Unknown vessels approaching. Alert. Unknown vessels approaching. Alert. Vex High and Zimtel rushed to the command center, where the rest of the research team was already gathering. On the main screen, they could see 3 ships moving toward their station. The ships looked rough and dangerous, with weapons pointed forward and battle scars covering their hulls. Pirates? Whispered Dr. Kelm, the station's senior archaeologist. His blue skin turned pale as he recognized the ship designs. Saurid raiders. Captain Torres, the station's security chief and the only human on the research team, stepped forward. She was a small woman, but everyone respected her. They're demanding we transmit all our research data, she said, reading from her console. They know we found something valuable. We can't give them this information, Vex High said firmly. If they learn about the Devourers and this beacon, they might try to use it as a weapon. Then we fight, Captain Torres said simply. The other researchers looked at her in shock. Catharians were peaceful people who avoided violence whenever possible. But Torres was human. And humans thought differently about these things. Fighting won't work, Dr. Kelm said. They have 3 ships with full weapon systems. We only have basic defensive shields. Maybe we can negotiate, Zimtel suggested. Torres shook her head. Saurid pirates don't negotiate. They take what they want. She moved to the weapon controls. But we can make them work for it. The first pirate ship opened fire, sending bright energy bolts crashing into the station's shields. The entire structure shook, and several researchers fell to the floor. Torres fired back with the station's small defensive guns, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Zimtel, send a distress call, Vex High ordered. Emergency frequency, maximum power. Tell everyone what we found here. If we don't survive, someone else needs to know about the Devourers. Zimtel's hands shook as he worked at his communication console. The station rocked again under enemy fire, and sparks flew from damaged circuits. In his panic, he made a mistake. Instead of using the standard civilian emergency channel, he accidentally set his transmitter to an ancient military frequency that hadn't been used for centuries. "Message ready," he called out. "Sending now. Research station under attack. Requesting immediate assistance. Urgent archaeological discovery. Ancient threat to galaxy." But the damaged transmitter mixed up his words. The signal that actually went out into space was very different. Research into ancient devourer weapons. Sector compromised. Requesting immediate military intervention. More enemy fire hit the station. The lights went out for a moment, then came back, dim and flickering. Torres kept shooting back, but one human with basic weapons couldn't stop 3 pirate ships. "Shields at 30%. Dr. Kelm reported. "Keep them busy," Torres muttered, targeting the nearest pirate ship. The battle continued for 20 more minutes. The pirates were careful not to destroy the station completely. They wanted the research data intact. Finally, they disabled the station's weapons and shields, leaving Harmony's Edge Times floating helpless in space. The lead pirate ship came close enough to dock, and Captain Torres prepared to defend the station with small arms. But instead of boarding, they sent a message. "We'll be back in 3 days with a bigger fleet." The pirate captain's voice crackled over the radio. "Have all your research data ready to transfer, or we'll take the station apart, piece by piece." The 3 ships turned and disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the research team alone with their damaged station and their terrible discovery. "Did our message get out?" Vexhai asked. Zimtel checked his console and nodded. "Signal transmitted successfully. But Chief, our communication system is badly damaged. I can't tell if anyone received it, and I can't send any more messages until we make repairs." Vexhai looked around at her frightened team, then at the ancient beacon still humming in the archaeology lab. They had 3 days before the pirates returned. 3 days to fix their station, protect their discovery, and hope that someone, somewhere, had heard their call for help. She had no way of knowing that her distress signal had already reached 3 different military fleets, or that each fleet had interpreted the message in completely different ways. Soon, help would arrive, but not the kind of help she expected. Far across the galaxy, the garbled distress signal from Harmony's Edge Times reached the Galactic Communication Network. The message traveled through dozens of relay stations, each one automatically copying and forwarding the transmission to the proper authorities. At the Altarian Defense Command, Admiral Reeftar was enjoying his evening meal when the emergency alert flashed on his personal communicator. His large eyes, designed for seeing underwater, focused on the screen with growing alarm. The Altarians lived on water worlds where the gravity was much lighter than most planets, and they considered any world with more than 1.2 times normal gravity to be a death world, where nothing should be able to survive. "Ancient devourer weapons," he read aloud, his gills fluttering with concern. "Sector compromised. Military intervention." Admiral Reeftar immediately called his command staff together. Within minutes, his best officers were gathered in the war room, their blue-green skin pale with worry. "This is a Code Crimson situation," Reeftar announced. "Some unknown force has discovered weapons from the ancient devourer species. We all know what the devourers did to the spiral arm civilizations 3,000 years ago." Commander Wavesong, his tactical officer, pulled up star charts on the main screen. The signal came from the outer rim, near the gas giant HFY 7. "That's an isolated area with only a small research station." "Who else received this transmission?" Admiral Reeftar asked. "The Centauri Peacekeeping Force and the Terran Colonial Marines," Wavesong replied, checking her console. Reeftar nodded approvingly. The Centaurians were bird-like people who understood the dangers of ancient weapons. They could be trusted to help contain this threat. As for the humans, Reeftar wasn't sure about them. Earth was a heavy world with thick atmosphere and dangerous weather. The fact that anything could evolve there made Altarians nervous, but humans seemed civilized enough. 3 hours later, the Altarian Third Fleet was racing through hyperspace toward the coordinates from the distress signal. 7 ships, including Admiral Reeftar's flagship Deep Current Asterisk, all equipped with the most advanced weapons the Altarian military could build. Meanwhile, On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Skydancer of the Centauri Peacekeeping Force was having similar thoughts. Her people lived on light worlds with thin atmosphere, where flying was easy and the air was clean. Centaurians thought any planet with more than 0.8 atmosphere pressure was too thick to breathe properly, a death world that would crush their delicate wings. Ancient weapons, Skydancer said to her officers, her feathered head crest rising with worry. This could threaten every peaceful species in the galaxy. We should coordinate with the Altarians, suggested her second-in-command, a young officer named Wind Whisper. They're good people who understand the importance of peace. Agreed. And the humans? Skydancer asked. Wind Whisper checked the species database. Earth is classified as a Category 9 survival world. High gravity, thick atmosphere, extreme weather patterns, dangerous native life forms. Their people are probably tough, but they seem to follow galactic law. Skydancer made her decision. We'll work with both fleets. This is too important for species politics. The Centauri 7th Wing launched from their base 4 hours after receiving the signal. 8 fast ships with powerful shields, designed for peacekeeping missions across the galaxy. But on Earth, in the Terran Colonial Marine headquarters, the situation looked completely different. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room, studying the decoded message with her senior staff. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and they were still learning how other species thought about things. What they did know was that when someone sent a military emergency signal, people were in serious trouble. Let me make sure I understand this, Admiral Chen said to her intelligence officer, Colonel Williams. Someone found ancient superweapons. The area is compromised by hostiles, and they need immediate military intervention. That's how we read it, Admiral. The signal was heavily corrupted, but those key words came through, clearly. Chen nodded grimly. Humans had learned the hard way what happened when dangerous technology fell into the wrong hands. The Proxima incident 30 years ago had taught them that sometimes you had to act fast and ask questions later. Who else is responding? She asked. The Altarian Defense Force and the Centauri Peacekeepers, Colonel Williams replied. Both good species with strong military traditions. Excellent. We'll coordinate with them when we arrive. Admiral Chen turned to her staff. I want the 3rd Expeditionary Force ready to launch in 6 hours. 3 heavy cruisers, the carrier times, Indomitable Asterisk, and full marine support. If someone's trying to get hold of galaxy-ending weapons, we're going to stop them. As the human fleet prepared for departure, computer systems across the galaxy began processing the incoming ship data. This was where the real problem started. The Altarian computers detected the approaching Centauri ships and automatically classified them as friendly, allied peacekeeping force. When they detected the human ships, however, the classification was different. Caution. Death World Origin Species. The Centauri computers had the same reaction. Altarians were marked as friendly allies, but humans were flagged as high-risk, extreme environment survivors. Both alien species had the same basic misunderstanding about Earth. They knew it was a dangerous planet by their standards, but they thought that made humans naturally aggressive and violent. In their minds, only warlike species could survive on such a hostile world. When the Altarian and Centauri fleets arrived at the coordinates first, they immediately began working together. Admiral Reeftar and Commander Skydancer opened communications and started planning their approach to the research station. The station appears damaged but intact, Skydancer reported. I'm detecting debris that suggests a recent battle. Pirates, probably, Reeftar replied. Criminals trying to steal ancient weapons for sale to the highest bidder. We should secure the area and wait for backup before investigating, Skydancer suggested. Agreed. How long until the human fleet arrives? Skydancer checked her sensors. Approximately 1 hour. That's when both commanders made the same terrible mistake. Their computers began analyzing the approaching human ships, and what they saw shocked them. The human vessels were heavily armored and bristling with weapons. They were clearly designed for fighting in the most dangerous conditions possible. Admiral, Wavesong called out from his tactical station. The human fleet configuration suggests aggressive intent. These aren't exploration ships. They're warships. Commander Skydancer received a similar report from her own officers. The human vessels are approaching at maximum speed, with weapons powered and ready to fire. Both alien commanders reached the same conclusion. The humans weren't coming to help contain the ancient weapons. They were coming to take them. This explains everything, Admiral Reeftar said grimly. Death World species need powerful weapons to survive. They probably sent that distress signal themselves to lure other fleets away from the discovery site. Skydancer's crest feathers flattened against her skull in anger. We should have seen this coming. They're going to claim those ancient weapons and use them to dominate peaceful species. Not if we stop them first, Reeftar replied. We have the advantage of position and numbers. If we work together, we can drive them off before they reach the station. Neither commander realized their terrible mistake. The human ships were heavily armed because humans came from a world where everything was trying to kill them, so they built everything to survive the worst possible conditions. The humans were approaching fast because they thought innocent people were in danger and needed immediate help. Admiral Sarah Chen, sitting in her command chair aboard the cruiser Times Defiant Asterisk, watched the tactical display with growing confusion. Why are the Altarian and Centauri fleets holding position instead of investigating the station? She asked. Unknown, Admiral, her tactical officer replied. They're not responding to our communication requests either. Maybe they're being cautious, Colonel Williams suggested. Ancient weapons are dangerous. Admiral Chen frowned. In her experience, when people were in danger, you helped them first and worried about safety second. But maybe other species did things differently. Take us in closer, she ordered. If they won't talk to us, we'll handle this ourselves. On the screens of both alien fleets, the human ships grew larger and more threatening with each passing minute. Neither side realized they were about to start a war based on a completely wrong understanding of each other's intentions. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the main screen as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the gas giant HFY 7. What she saw made her immediately suspicious. Two alien fleets had formed a defensive wall between her ships and the research station, with weapons powered and shields raised. That's not how you respond to a rescue mission, she muttered to Colonel Williams, who stood beside her command chair. Maybe they're protecting the station from whatever attacked it, Williams suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe they're protecting something else, Chen replied. She opened a communication channel to both alien fleets. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Marines. We're here to respond to the distress signal. What's your status? The response came from Admiral Reeftar of the Altarian fleet, but it wasn't what Chen expected. Human vessels. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. This area is under quarantine by Joint Altarian Centauri Authority. Chen's eyes narrowed. Quarantine? We received a military emergency signal requesting immediate intervention. There are civilians on that research station who may need help. Commander Skydancer's voice joined the communication. The situation is contained, human commander. Your assistance is not required. Something in the bird-like alien's tone made Chen's jaw tighten. She had heard that careful, dismissive way of speaking before. Usually from people who thought humans were too stupid or too violent to handle delicate situations. Let me be clear, Chen said, her voice taking on the hard edge that her officers knew meant trouble. 12 researchers sent a distress call. Until I confirm they're safe, my fleet isn't going anywhere. Admiral, her sensor officer called out. The alien ships are moving to block our approach to the station. They're targeting our vessels. Chen looked at the tactical display in disbelief. The two alien fleets were actually pointing weapons at her ships while claiming to be on a rescue mission. What kind of rescue operation targets other rescuers? The answer came when Admiral Reeftar fired a warning shot across the bow of Chen's flagship. The bright energy beam passed just in front of the Times Defiant Asterisk, close enough to make the bridge lights flicker. That was a warning, Reeftar announced over the radio. Withdraw now, or we will consider your presence an act of aggression. Colonel Williams stared at the screen in shock. Admiral, they actually shot at us. Chen stood up from her command chair, her face calm but her eyes dangerous. Yes, they did. She had spent 20 years fighting pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens who threatened human colonies. She knew the difference between a misunderstanding and an attack. All ships, defensive positions, she ordered. Raise shields, power weapons, but do not fire unless fired upon. On the Altarian flagship, Admiral Reeftar watched the human ships spread out into battle formation. "Look at that," he said to Commander Wavesong. "They're not running. Death World species never back down from a fight. Should we call for reinforcements?" Wavesong asked nervously. "With what?" "They're jamming our communications." Reeftar pointed at his comm station, where frustrated technicians were trying to reach their home base. What he didn't know was that the communications problems were caused by interference from the ancient beacon on the research station, not by human jamming. Commander Skydancer was having similar problems with her own communications. "These Death World barbarians are more organized than we thought," she told her officers. "They've cut us off from outside help." Both alien commanders made the same mistake. They assumed the humans had planned this attack and were now moving to take the ancient weapons by force. Neither of them considered that the humans might be just as confused and worried as they were. Admiral Chen tried one more time to communicate peacefully. "Altarian and Centauri vessels, we are not your enemy. We're here to help with whatever emergency is happening on that research station. Let's work together to solve this problem." "Your deception won't work," Skydancer replied coldly. "We know why Death World species want ancient weapons." Chen blinked in surprise. "Death World species? What are you talking about?" Instead of answering, Admiral Reeftar opened fire with his entire fleet. 28 energy cannons and 16 missile launchers fired at the same time, sending a massive wave of destruction toward the human ships. The alien commanders expected the human vessels to be destroyed, or at least badly damaged by such overwhelming firepower. They were wrong. The human shields absorbed the energy blasts without breaking, and point defense systems shot down the incoming missiles before they could hit. Sparks flew from some control panels, and the ships shook under the impact, but all 3 cruisers and the carrier remained fully operational. "Damage report," Chen ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship rocked. "Minor shield damage to the Times Intrepid Asterisk," came the reply. "All ships combat effective." Chen stared at the tactical display. The alien fleets had just hit her ships with enough firepower to level a city, and her people weren't even seriously hurt. Meanwhile, her sensors showed that the alien vessels were built much lighter than human ships, with weaker shields and thinner armor. "They're fragile," she realized. "They think they hit us with everything they have, and we're still here." "They must be terrified." "Admiral," her tactical officer called out. "Both alien fleets are pulling back. They're acting like they've never seen ships survive that kind of attack." Chen made a decision that would change everything. "All ships, targeted fire only. Disable their weapons and engines, but do not destroy their vessels. We're going to end this fight without killing anyone." The human counterattack was nothing like what the aliens expected. Instead of massive energy blasts designed to destroy entire ships, the human weapons fired precise beams that cut through alien armor like surgical knives. Within minutes, half the Altarian fleet had lost their main guns, and several Centauri ships were drifting helplessly with their engines disabled. "How are they doing that?" Wavesong asked in amazement as he watched human weapons slice through their heaviest armor plating. Admiral Reeftar had no answer. The Death World ships were taking apart his fleet piece by piece, but they weren't actually trying to kill anyone. Every shot was carefully aimed to disable rather than destroy. Commander Skydancer was equally confused. "They could have destroyed us all by now," she told her officers. "Why are they holding back?" The answer came from Admiral Chen herself, who was still trying to communicate despite the battle raging around them. "All vessels, cease fire immediately. We have bigger problems than fighting each other." On her sensors, she had detected something that made her blood run cold. Energy readings were spiking from the research station, and something was broadcasting a powerful signal into deep space. Whatever was happening on that station was far more dangerous than a few confused alien fleets. "Colonel Williams, get me everything our sensors can tell us about that research station," she ordered. "I think we've all been distracted from the real threat." The fighting slowly died down as both alien fleets realized their weapons couldn't penetrate human defenses. while human weapons could disable their ships without killing the crews. It was a completely one-sided battle. But the humans weren't acting like conquerors. Admiral Reeftar, Commander Skydancer, Chen called over the radio. "I don't know why you attacked us, and right now, I don't care. Something on that research station is broadcasting a signal that could threaten this entire sector. We need to work together to stop it." For the first time since the battle began, there was silence from the alien fleets. Both commanders were trying to understand how Death World barbarians could be more concerned about civilian safety than winning a fight. The answer would have surprised them. Humans had learned long ago that the most important battles weren't against each other, but against the things that threatened everyone equally. And right now, something ancient and hungry was waking up in response to the beacon's call. Admiral Chen looked at the tactical display, where 3 fleets sat in an uneasy ceasefire, while energy readings from the research station continued to climb. They had all come here to prevent a disaster, but they might have already triggered something much worse than ancient weapons. "Time to save the galaxy," she said quietly. Again, just as the 3 fleets reached their uneasy ceasefire, new contacts appeared on everyone's sensors. 6 ships dropped out of hyperspace on the far side of the gas giant, moving fast toward the research station. "Pirates," Admiral Chen announced, recognizing the ship configurations immediately. Saurid raiders, heavily armed. The pirate fleet was led by Captain Krax, a large reptilian saurid who had spent his entire life taking things from people who couldn't stop him. When he and his ships had left the research station 3 days ago, he expected to return and find it helpless and waiting for him. Instead, he found what looked like a major space battle. "What is this?" Krax hissed to his crew from the bridge of his flagship Times Bloodclaw Asterisk. 3 different fleets fighting over our prize? His second in command, a smaller saurid named Vex, checked their sensors. "The big ships with heavy armor? Those are from Earth. Death World species. The other 2 fleets look like Altarians and Centaurians." Krax's yellow eyes gleamed with greed. "Perfect. While they fight each other, we take the research data and disappear. Death World ships are tough, but they're distracted." The saurid fleet split into 2 groups. Half the ships would attack all 3 fleets to keep them busy, while the other half would dock with the research station and steal everything valuable. "Attack pattern 7, Krax ordered. "Hit them all. Make them think we're trying to destroy them. Then grab what we came for while they're confused." The pirates opened fire on all 3 fleets at the same time, their weapons targeting whatever was closest. Energy beams lanced out toward human, Altarian, and Centauri ships without discrimination. On the Times Defiant Asterisk, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with growing understanding. "Finally, something that makes sense," she said to Colonel Williams. "Those are the hostiles from the original distress call. Should we coordinate with the alien fleets?" Williams asked. "Try to," Chen ordered. "But if they won't listen, we handle this ourselves." She opened a communication channel to both Admiral Reeftar and Commander Skydancer. "All vessels, we have a common enemy. Pirates are attacking everyone equally. I suggest we stop shooting at each other and deal with the actual threat." Admiral Reeftar hesitated. Everything he had been taught said that Death World species couldn't be trusted, especially during combat. But the human ships had already proven they could destroy his fleet if they wanted to, and instead they had only disabled his weapons. Maybe these particular Death Worlders were different. "Agreed," he said finally. "Joint defense against pirate attack." Commander Skydancer made the same decision. "Centauri forces will coordinate with both fleets." The 3 military forces turned their attention to the saurid pirates, and the battle that followed was completely one-sided. The pirates were used to fighting merchant ships and small patrol vessels, not actual military fleets. Within 10 minutes, half their ships were disabled or destroyed. But while the space battle raged, something terrible was happening on the research station. Chief Researcher Vex High felt the entire station shake as energy weapons fired outside. She and her team had spent 3 days trying to repair their communications and figure out what to do about the ancient beacon. Now it seemed like a war had started right outside their door. "The beacon's energy readings are climbing," Dr. Kelm reported from the archaeology lab. All this weapons fire is feeding power into it somehow. Vex's High rushed to check the ancient device. The metal object was glowing brighter than ever before, and the symbols carved on its surface were beginning to pulse with inner light. It's responding to the energy discharges from the battle. We're accidentally charging it to full power. In space, Admiral Chen noticed the same thing. Her sensors showed massive energy spikes coming from the research station every time someone fired a weapon. "Cease fire," she ordered her fleet. "All ships, stop shooting immediately." But it was too late. The ancient beacon had absorbed enough energy from the battle to complete a charging cycle that should have taken another 1,000 years. Deep in the ruins on the planet below, machinery that had slept for millennia suddenly came online. Captain Torres, still on the research station, felt the floor vibrate under her feet. "Something's happening in the ruins," she reported to Vex High over her communicator. "Major seismic activity." On the station's main screen, they watched in horror as the beacon began transmitting. A powerful signal burst out from the device, racing through space faster than light. But this wasn't a call for help. It was an invitation to dinner. "What is it broadcasting?" Zimtel asked, trying to decode the signal with his damaged equipment. Dr. Kelm worked frantically at his console, translating the ancient symbols as they scrolled across his screen. "Coordinate data," he said, his voice growing more frightened with each word. "It's transmitting the location of every inhabited star system in the galaxy." "Transmitting to what?" Vex High demanded. "Something in the void between galaxies," Dr. Kelm replied. "Something that's been waiting for this signal for 2,000 years. In space, Admiral Chen's communication officer picked up the transmission and ran it through their computer systems. "Admiral, we're reading massive data burst from the research station. The signal is heading toward empty space, ma'am. Deep intergalactic void. Can we stop it?" "Negative. The transmission is already complete." Chen stared at the tactical display, where the remaining pirate ships were fleeing and the alien fleets were regrouping. "Get me everything we know about this research station and what they were studying." 5 minutes later, she had her answer, and it made her stomach turn cold. Ancient species called the Devourers. They consumed entire star systems before disappearing 2,000 years ago, and we just sent them a detailed map of every inhabited world in the galaxy. Colonel Williams looked sick. "How long before they receive the signal?" "Computer estimates 18 months for the signal to reach the nearest void region where they might be hibernating," the communication officer reported. "Maybe 2 years for them to travel back here." Admiral Chen closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter back on Earth, of all the peaceful colonies humanity had built among the stars, of the billions of innocent people living on thousands of worlds who had no idea what was coming for them. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with grim determination. "Colonel, prepare the Marines for station boarding. We're going to that research station to find out everything we can about the Devourers and this beacon." "Admiral," Williams said carefully, "the alien fleets might not let us approach the station." Chen looked at the tactical display, where the Altarian and Centauri ships were holding position between her fleet and the research station. Both alien commanders still weren't sure whether to trust the Deathworld humans. "Then we'll have to convince them," she said. "Because right now, the only thing standing between the Devourers and every living being in this galaxy is whatever information is on that station." She opened a communication channel to both alien fleets. "Admiral Reeftar, Commander Skydancer, I need to explain something to you. We're all facing a threat that makes our recent fight look like a children's game. If you want your people to survive the next 5 years, we need to work together right now." The response came from Admiral Reeftar, and for the first time since the humans had arrived, his voice didn't carry suspicion or fear. "What do you need us to do?" "Hyman," Chen smiled grimly. "Maybe Deathworld species and peaceful civilizations could work together after all. Especially when the alternative was extinction for everyone. We need to board that research station and shut down that beacon before it sends any more signals. And we need to learn everything we can about the Devourers before they come back to finish what they started." In the archaeology lab on Time's Harmony's Edge asterisk, the ancient beacon continued to pulse with malevolent energy. Its job complete. Somewhere in the dark void between galaxies, something ancient and hungry had received its message and was beginning to stir. Admiral Chen didn't wait for the alien fleets to finish their discussions about proper boarding protocols. While Admiral Reeftar and Commander Skydancer debated the safety regulations for approaching a potentially dangerous research station, Chen was already launching her Marines. "Major Webb, take your team to that station immediately," she ordered. "We need to shut down that beacon and secure any information about the Devourers." Major Marcus Webb had served with the Colonial Marines for 15 years, and he had learned that when people were in danger, you helped them first and worried about paperwork later. "Understood, Admiral. How many men do you want me to take?" "Take them all," Chen replied. "This isn't a normal boarding operation. That beacon needs to be shut down, and according to the research team, the process might be lethal to whoever tries it." Webb nodded without hesitation. Death World species understood that sometimes the only way to save everyone was for someone to risk everything. 12 minutes later, Webb's assault shuttle Hammer Times, was racing toward the research station while energy weapons still fired sporadically around them. The remaining pirates were trying to escape, but some of them were still taking shots at anything that moved. "Sir," Corporal Martinez called from the pilot seat, "the alien fleets are requesting we wait for them to establish proper safety procedures." Webb checked his rifle and smiled grimly. "Tell them we appreciate the concern, but people are dying while they're making plans." On the Altarian flagship, Admiral Reeftar watched in amazement as the human shuttle flew straight through weapons fire toward the research station. "They're not even waiting for escort ships," he told Commander Wavesong. "They're just going. Death World protocols." Wavesong replied with something that might have been respect. "When their people are in danger, they don't hesitate." Commander Skydancer was having similar thoughts on her own ship. "I've never seen anyone move that fast to help strangers," she admitted to her officers. "Maybe we misunderstood their intentions." The human shuttle docked with Time's Harmony's Edge just as the last pirate ship jumped to hyperspace. Major Webb and his 12 Marines were aboard the station 30 seconds later, moving through the corridors with weapons ready. They found Chief Researcher Vex High and her team barricaded in the command center, where Captain Torres was still trying to coordinate repairs with her damaged equipment. "Ma'am," Webb said to Vex High. "Major Marcus Webb, Terran Colonial Marines. We're here to help with your emergency." Vex High looked at the tall human in full combat armor and felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Everything she had heard said that Death World species were dangerous, but this one had risked his life to help people he had never met. "The beacon," she said quickly. "It's in the archaeology lab. We need to shut it down before it sends another signal." "Show us," Webb ordered. Captain Torres led the Marines through the station to the archaeology lab, where the ancient beacon was still pulsing with energy. Dr. Kelm was working frantically at his computer, trying to understand the device's controls. "The good news is that I think I can shut it down," Dr. Kelm reported. "The bad news is that someone has to interface directly with the beacon's control system. According to these warnings, the energy feedback will probably kill whoever tries it." Major Webb walked over to examine the device. It was covered in symbols he couldn't read, but he could see connection ports that looked like they were designed for some kind of neural interface. "What exactly does probably kill mean?" "The warnings say that most species can't survive the neural connection," Vex High explained. "The energy levels are too high for normal brain activity." Webb nodded and started removing his helmet. "Most species, maybe. But humans aren't most species." "Sir," Sergeant Rodriguez called out, "you can't be serious. We should wait for specialists to study this thing." "Rodriguez, do you see any specialists here?" Webb asked calmly. "Because I see a beacon that's already called a galaxy-eating species home for dinner, and I see people who need help right now." He walked over to the beacon's control interface and examined the connection ports. "Dr. Kelm, what do I need to do?" "Place your hands on these contact points," Dr. Kelm said nervously. The device will establish a neural link, and you'll need to mentally command it to shut down. But Major, the energy levels will either kill me or they won't. Webb finished. Doc, I've been shot, blown up, and poisoned more times than I can count. One more dangerous situation isn't going to stop me from doing my job. He placed his hands on the contact points. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Energy coursed through Webb's body, and his eyes began glowing with the same light as the beacon. Every muscle in his body went rigid, and the Marines could see his vital signs spiking on their medical scanners. "Major," Rodriguez called out, but Webb couldn't hear him. Inside his mind, Webb was connected to a network that spanned thousands of years. He could see the history of the Devourers, feel their hunger, understand their terrible purpose, but he could also see the beacon's control systems, and with grim determination, he began shutting them down one by one. On the screens around the lab, the beacon's energy readings began dropping. The pulsing lights dimmed, and the terrible transmission signal finally stopped. Webb collapsed to the floor, unconscious but breathing. "Medic!" Rodriguez yelled, but Corporal Hayes was already checking Webb's pulse. "He's alive," Hayes reported. "Unconscious, heart rate elevated, but stable. Sir's too stubborn to die from a little alien technology." Dr. Kelm stared at his instruments in amazement. "The beacon is completely shut down." He did it. A human actually survived a direct neural interface with ancient technology. "Of course he did," Captain Torres said with pride. "He's a Marine." 2 hours later, Major Webb woke up in the station's medical bay, with Admiral Chen standing beside his bed. His head felt like someone had used it for target practice. But he was alive. "Report, Major," Chen said with a slight smile. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. Beacon is shut down, research data is secure, and I learned some very interesting things about the Devourers." "Such as?" Webb sat up carefully, his head still spinning. "They're not actually extinct. They're hibernating in dark space between galaxies, waiting for signals like the one that Beacon was sending. The good news is that they move slowly. It'll take them at least 5 years to get here even after receiving our coordinates. And the bad news? When they do arrive, they'll be hungry enough to eat every living thing in the galaxy." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "Then we have 5 years to prepare. And we're going to need every species in the galaxy working together to have any chance of stopping them." 3 days later, representatives from all 3 fleets met on the research station to plan their next steps. The meeting would have been impossible a week earlier. Altarians, Centaurians, and humans working together as equals. Admiral Reeftar addressed the group. "I owe the human fleet an apology. We misunderstood your intentions and attacked without cause. We all made mistakes," Admiral Chen replied diplomatically. "The important thing is that we're working together now." Commander Skydancer nodded in agreement. "Our databases classified Earth as a death world, but we didn't understand what that really meant. We thought it made your people dangerous to others. We didn't realize it made you dangerous to the things that threaten everyone else." Chief Researcher Vex High had spent the last 3 days talking with Major Webb about human culture and history. "I request that Terran Colonial Marines be assigned to this station permanently," she announced. "If we're going to study ancient technologies that might be dangerous, we need people nearby who consider, probably lethal, to be acceptable risk." Admiral Chen laughed. "I think that can be arranged." 6 months later, the incident was officially recorded in galactic history as the Death World Misunderstanding. New protocols were established for emergency communications, and the research station Times Harmony's Edge Times became the first joint human-alien facility for studying dangerous ancient technologies. Major Webb recovered completely from his neural interface experience and requested permanent assignment to the new Xenoarchaeology Security Division. His official report noted that interfacing with potentially lethal alien technology was exactly the kind of challenge that appealed to someone from a death world. The most important change, however, was in how other species viewed humanity. Earth's people were still considered dangerous by galactic standards, but now they were the good kind of dangerous, the kind who showed up when you needed them most and refused to give up until everyone was safe. Admiral Chen kept the original garbled distress message framed on her office wall. Beneath it was a small plaque that read, "Sometimes the scariest species in the galaxy are exactly who you want on your side." And in the deep void between galaxies, something ancient and hungry continued its slow journey toward the coordinates it had received. But now, instead of finding easy prey waiting helplessly for consumption, it would find a galaxy united and defended by species who had learned that Death World inhabitants made the best possible allies. The Devourers were coming, but humanity would be ready for them,